Part 1. The sound of combat boots striking concrete echoed across the parade ground like a heartbeat counting down to something inevitable. 150 soldiers stood in rigid formation beneath the pale morning sun at Joint Training Facility Bravo, their ACU uniforms pressed into knife-sharp creases, their eyes fixed forward on nothing and everything at once. Pentagon officials clustered near the command platform, tablets in hand, documenting another milestone in the Integration Success Initiative. Media crews adjusted their cameras, hunting for the perfect shot of military unity. Third row, seventh position from the left, a woman stood at attention. She measured 5'4" in her boots, her frame so slight that the standard-issue uniform seemed to swallow her whole. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, so tight it could pass inspection from a satellite. Her name tape read Carter. Her face revealed nothing. Behind her, Instructor Jasper Chambers surveyed the formation like a hawk circling wounded prey. 6'2", 220 pounds of muscle built through years of Ranger School pride and combat deployments he mentioned at every opportunity. His jaw was square enough to cut glass, and his eyes held the particular cruelty of men who mistake authority for power. He leaned toward Bruno Garrett, his perpetual shadow, and pitched his voice just loud enough. "Fresh meat. $20 says she doesn't survive the week." Bruno snorted. The sound carried across the formation like a gunshot in a library. What happened next took less than 3 seconds. As the formation stepped forward in unison, Jasper extended his right boot directly into Carter's path. Deliberate, precise, the kind of calculated cruelty that leaves no evidence but accomplishes its goal with surgical efficiency. Carter stumbled forward, arms pinwheeling, her cover flying off her head and landing in the dirt 2 meters away. She hit the ground on one knee, palm slapping concrete to break her fall. Behind her, a cluster of instructors released muffled laughter, the kind of sound that says, "We saw everything, and we are not going to help." Admiral Oliver Brennan watched from the command platform, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Major Derek Walsh shook his head slowly, whether in disgust at the prank or the victim's weakness remained unclear. Carter rose, slowly, deliberately. She retrieved her cover, dusted it off, placed it precisely on her head, and adjusted her position back to parade rest. Not a word. Not a glance back at her attacker, not a single flicker of emotion crossed her features. But if anyone had been watching closely, truly watching, they would have noticed something peculiar. The way she regained her balance was not the awkward scramble of an untrained recruit. It was a controlled roll, weight redistributed through her core with the efficiency of someone who had learned to fall in places where falling wrong meant dying. Her fingers automatically checked to the position where a sidearm would sit. Muscle memory betraying training, her personnel file failed to mention. And for half a second, less than a heartbeat, her eyes scanned the entire formation. 150 people cataloged in the time it took to blink. No one noticed the edge of dark ink barely visible beneath her collar, a fragment of something larger, something that would have made Jasper Chambers wish he had called in sick today. The formation concluded without further incident. Dismissed to their respective duties, the soldiers dispersed across the facility like water finding its level. Carter reported to the administrative building, her steps measured, her posture impeccable despite the mud staining her right knee. The clerk behind the processing desk, a young corporal named Willow Pierce with kind eyes and ink stains on her fingers, pushed a stack of forms across the counter. "Name and service number." "Carter, Fern." She provided the number from memory. Willow typed, frowned, typed again. "System is being slow. Happens every time brass comes through. Sit tight." Carter nodded and settled into a plastic chair that had seen better decades. While she waited, she folded her hands in her lap, left over right, fingers interlaced at precise angles. Willow glanced up from her screen, looked at Carter's hands, looked back at her screen. Something flickered across her face, recognition of a pattern she could not quite place, and then it was gone. "You write left-handed," Willow said. Carter remained still. "But your watch is on your left wrist. Most lefties wear it on the right." Silence stretched between them like a held breath. Then Carter's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. Old habits. Before Willow could probe further, the door slammed open. Jasper Chambers filled the frame like a bad omen given physical form. Well, well. He crossed to the counter, deliberately placing himself between Carter and Willow. "Processing our new diversity hire, Corporal?" Willow's fingers froze over her keyboard. "She has got dirt on her uniform," Jasper continued, examining Carter like she was a specimen in a jar. Discipline issue already. I will be documenting that for her file. Carter remained seated, silent. Her eyes fixed on a point approximately 6 inches to the left of Jasper's shoulder. Nothing to say? He bent down until his face was level with hers, close enough that his breath moved the wisps of hair that had escaped her bun. That is good. That is smart. The quiet ones sometimes last longer. Not usually, but sometimes. He straightened, slapped the counter once, and strode out. Willow exhaled like she had been holding her breath underwater. I am sorry. He is not usually, well, no, that is a lie. He is always like that. He has a history with female trainees. None of them lasted more than 2 weeks. Carter's expression remained unchanged throughout the entire encounter. Equipment issue is next. Willow blinked at the redirect, then nodded quickly, eager to move past the moment. Right. Yes. Armory, Building 7. Take the 3rd left after the chow hall. The armory smelled like gun oil and old leather, the particular perfume of weapons maintained by hands that understood their purpose. Tech Sergeant Edwin Ford ran the operation with the territorial aggression of a dragon guarding its hoard. His eyes swept Carter from boots to cover in a single dismissive motion. Size? Small. Everything, he snorted. Bet you hear that a lot. He disappeared into the back and returned with a rifle that looked like it had survived more engagements than some veterans. The stock was scratched, the carrying handle worn smooth, the magazine well bearing the distinctive marks of repeated reloading under stress. M4 carbine, Ford announced, as if she might not recognize it. This one has been around. She has got character. Carter took the weapon with both hands, and something changed in the armory air. The way her fingers found their positions was not learned. It was remembered. Muscle memory encoded so deeply it bypassed conscious thought entirely. She pulled back the charging handle with a smooth motion, locked the bolt to the rear, checked the chamber. Her eyes swept the weapon in a pattern that went far beyond basic familiarization. Feed lips on the magazine, condition of the gas tube, wear patterns on the bolt carrier group. There is a burr on the extractor, she said quietly, and the gas rings are worn. She will short stroke under sustained fire. Ford's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. How would you, that is just standard issue, nothing wrong with it. Carter set the weapon on the counter with the same care most people reserved for infants. Nothing a proper cleaning kit and replacement parts will not fix. She signed for the equipment without further comment and left Ford standing in his domain, his certainties about the new recruit already fracturing along lines he did not yet understand. Does injustice make your blood boil? You are not alone. Every day, people who have earned their place face those who have not earned theirs, trying to tear them down. But here is what bullies never understand. Silence is not weakness. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous. If you believe real strength does not need to announce itself, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will prove that some mistakes cannot be undone. The next 10 minutes will change everything for everyone on that parade ground. Do not miss it. The barracks assigned to female personnel was a converted storage building that the Army, in its infinite wisdom, had declared habitable 20 years and several renovation promises ago. Carter's bunk was in the corner, furthest from the showers, beneath the window that had been painted shut sometime during the previous administration. Her locker door hung at an angle that suggested it had been pried open and hastily closed. Inside, her gear had been rearranged, magazines scattered, cleaning kit missing components. The subtle sabotage of someone who wanted deniability. Carter inventoried the damage in silence, her fingers moving through her equipment with methodical precision. When she found the damaged sling, the one that would fail under load, she simply removed it and set it aside. They do that to all the new ones. The voice came from 3 bunks over. A young woman with red hair and freckles across her nose sat on her mattress, watching Carter with the cautious interest of prey evaluating whether the new arrival might be predator or fellow hunted. Corporal Clover Hayes, the redhead said. Supply section. You are Carter, right? The one Jasper tripped at formation? Carter nodded once. Word of advice? Transfer out while you can. Request a different facility. Anywhere but here. Why do you stay? The question seemed to catch Clover off guard. She looked at her hands, at the wall, at anything except Carter's steady gaze. I have 14 months left on my contract. Transferring takes longer than that. And besides, where would I go? The next place might be worse. Carter crossed the space between them and sat on the adjacent bunk, uninvited but not unwelcome. Has anyone ever filed a complaint? 12, Clover said, and the number carried the weight of tombstones. 12 complaints in 18 months, all dismissed. Insufficient evidence. Misunderstanding of training intensity. You know how it goes. Carter did know. She knew better than anyone in this building, but she simply nodded. Jasper has got friends in the right places, Clover continued. Bruno is his attack dog. Erica Vaughn, she is the female instructor who should be on our side, but she traded her loyalty for acceptance. And Ford, he just goes along with whatever keeps him comfortable. And the commanding officers? Major Walsh thinks women should not be in combat roles at all. He is not quiet about it. And Admiral Brennan, well, he watches a lot but never says much. Some people think he is part of the problem. Others think he is just waiting for something. No one knows what. Carter filed each piece of information away with the precision of an intelligence analyst. What about the others, soldiers who have not been compromised? Sergeant First Class Aiden Foster is decent. Chief Warrant Officer Ronan Clark, too. He runs the medical training, sees everything, says nothing. Lieutenant Dahlia Brooks in Intel, she has been collecting something, but no one knows what. The barracks door banged open. Erica Vaughn strode in like she owned the real estate and everyone in it. Behind her, 2 other female instructors flanked like escort fighters. New girl, Erica's voice carried the particular sweetness of poison wrapped in sugar. Settling in, Carter stood. Yes, instructor. That is nice. That is very nice. Erica circled her slowly, Predator assessing vulnerability. You know, I worked hard to get where I am. I did not let my gender be an excuse. I did not ask for special treatment. I earned my place. Carter remained silent. Some people think they can coast through on quotas and diversity initiatives. Some people think showing up is the same as earning it. Erica stopped directly in front of Carter, close enough to count the threads in her uniform. I want you to know that I will be watching you. Every mistake, every failure, every moment of weakness. I will be there. Understood, instructor. Erica searched Carter's face for signs of fear, anger, anything she could use as leverage. She found nothing but calm waters concealing unknown depths. Dinner is at 1800 hours. Do not be late. The instructors left. Clover exhaled like she had been holding her breath for the entire encounter. Holy cow, how do you do that? Just stand there and take it? Carter turned to look at her, and for just a moment, something flickered behind her eyes. Not anger exactly. Something older. Something that had seen enough to know which battles were worth fighting, and which were merely distractions. Some fights require patience, Carter said. The right moment comes to those who wait for it. Dawn arrived at 0500 with all the subtlety of an artillery barrage. Whistles shrieked, instructors shouted, bodies tumbled from bunks and assembled in the pre-dawn darkness for physical training. Carter took her place at the end of the formation, the position reserved for newcomers and those deemed least worthy of attention. Bruno Garrett ran the session, his voice a continuous assault of insults and demands. 50 push-ups, now, and I mean real push-ups, not whatever weak garbage they taught you at basic. The formation dropped. Carter's form was textbook, her descent and rise synchronized with mechanical precision. Beside her, younger soldiers struggled, their arms shaking, their breathing ragged. What is the matter, ladies? Bruno walked among them, like a shark through bleeding swimmers. This too hard for you? Maybe you should have thought about that before you tried playing soldier. He stopped directly above Carter. You, new girl, you think you are impressive? Anyone can count to 50. Let us see you do another 50. Carter continued without hesitation, her rhythm unchanged, her breathing steady. Bruno's face twisted. He had expected resistance, complaint, failure. The absence of any of these left him grasping for new tactics. On your feet, all of you. Time for a run. The obstacle course stretched before them like a gauntlet designed by someone who genuinely hated human beings. Rope climbs, wall traversals, mud pits deep enough to swallow soldiers whole. At the starting line, Jasper Chambers waited with a stopwatch and a smile that promised nothing good. Carter, he singled her out with a pointed finger. Since you are our newest addition, why do you not go first? Show everyone what you are made of. Carter stepped to the line. She checked her boots, adjusted her gloves. And then she noticed it. The rope on the first climb had been frayed near the top, cut just enough to fail under full body weight. The safety net beneath it had been moved 3 feet to the left. She made a note of the sabotage. She did not hesitate. The whistle blew, and Carter launched forward with a burst of speed that caught everyone off guard. Her approach to the rope was unconventional, using a technique that distributed weight across multiple contact points, rather than relying on pure grip strength. She ascended past the frayed section before it could give way, her hands finding purchase in ways that spoke of rope work, in conditions far worse than a training facility. The wall came next. Most soldiers treated it as an obstacle to be overcome with brute force. Carter flowed over it like water, her body finding angles and leverage points invisible to untrained eyes. She hit the far side already moving, already calculating the next challenge. In the observation tower, Admiral Brennan lowered his binoculars. Beside him, a staff officer made notes on a tablet. "Sir, is something wrong?" "Wrong?" Brennan kept his eyes on the figure navigating the course below. "No, something is very right." Carter completed the course in 8 minutes and 42 seconds. It was not the facility record. She had held back. That much was obvious to anyone who knew what to look for, but it was fast enough to make Jasper Chambers uncomfortable. "Lucky run," he announced to the assembled soldiers. "Course was muddy, conditions were favorable. Let us see how she does with a real challenge." Modern military operations depend on technology that civilians rarely see. Advanced communication systems that work in the most hostile environments. Encryption that keeps classified information secure. Medical monitoring devices that can predict health issues before they become critical. These technologies eventually filter down to civilian applications, smartphones with military-grade encryption, fitness trackers based on combat performance monitors, emergency communication devices that work when cell towers fail. The innovation happening in defense technology today becomes the consumer products of tomorrow, making everyday life safer and more connected. The afternoon brought classroom instruction on tactical movement, a subject Jasper considered his personal domain. 30 trainees sat in metal folding chairs while he paced the front of the room, laser pointer in hand, ego in overdrive. "Urban combat," he began, "is not something you learn from books. It is not something you learn from simulators. It is something you learn from experience, real experience, the kind that leaves marks." He paused for effect, letting his gaze sweep the room. When it landed on Carter, it lingered. "Some of you will never understand what I am talking about. Some of you have never been tested, never felt the weight of life and death pressing down on your shoulders." Carter's expression remained neutral, but her pen had stopped moving across her notepad. "Let me tell you about Kandahar Province, 2012. My unit was pinned down for 9 hours. 9 hours of sustained enemy contact. You want to know what separated the soldiers who survived from the ones who did not?" He looked directly at Carter. It was not size. It was not strength. It was knowing when to act and when to wait. It was reading the situation before the situation read you. Something flickered across Carter's face, gone before anyone could name it. Her pen moved again, jotting a note that had nothing to do with Jasper's lecture. "Now," Jasper clicked to a new slide, a satellite image of a building complex. "I want tactical assessments. You, new girl, stand up." Carter rose. "Look at this image. Tell me how you would approach this target. Entry points, overwatch positions, exfil routes." The room held its breath. This was a test designed for failure. The image was complex, the angles difficult, the variables numerous enough to trip up soldiers with years more experience. Carter studied the screen for exactly 4 seconds. The northwest corner is the only viable primary entry. The building has structural supports that create blind spots at 45-degree intervals from the main corridors. I would place Overwatch on the water tower at grid reference 7-3, which gives clear sight lines to 3 of the 4 exits. Exfil runs southeast through the market district because the narrow streets provide cover from aerial observation and the civilian density discourages heavy pursuit. Silence. Jasper's mouth opened, closed, opened again. The assessment was not just correct. It was comprehensive. It incorporated factors he had not even mentioned, variables that would only occur to someone with operational experience. "How do you know there is a water tower at that grid reference?" His voice had lost some of its confidence. "I did not show the full map. Standard infrastructure placement for that region," Carter said simply. "Municipal water systems in that area of Kandahar Province typically position elevated tanks at consistent intervals to maintain pressure gradients." Major Derek Walsh, who had been observing from the back of the room, straightened in his chair. "And you know this because—" Carter turned to face him, her expression unchanged. "Geography courses, sir." It was not a lie. It was simply not the whole truth. Walsh stared at her for a long moment before returning his attention to his tablet. His fingers moved across the screen, sending a query to someone Carter could not see. The mess hall at 1800 hours was a study in tribal dynamics. Jasper's crew occupied the central tables, their laughter too loud, their gestures too expansive. Female trainees clustered near the exits, close to escape routes. The instructors who had not chosen sides ate quickly and left quicker. Carter collected her tray and moved toward an empty table in the corner. Before she could sit, Erica Vaughn appeared at her elbow. "That was quite a performance in tactics class," Erica said, her voice pitched to Carrie. "Impressive. Almost like you had been there before." "Thank you, instructor." Funny thing about impressive performances. Erica leaned closer, her smile never reaching her eyes. They attract attention. And attention is not always a good thing in this facility. "I understand, instructor." "Do you?" Erica's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because I have seen impressive soldiers come through here before. Women who thought they could change things. Women who thought their skills would protect them. They are all gone now. Every single one." She patted Carter's shoulder with mock affection and walked away, her heels clicking against the concrete floor like a metronome counting down. Carter ate alone. Around her, conversations swirled. Rumors were already spreading. The new trainee who had aced the tactics assessment, who had run the obstacle course like she had been born on it, who took every insult and challenge without breaking. The stories were exaggerated with each telling, but the core remained true. Something about Fern Carter did not add up. In the intelligence office, Lieutenant Dahlia Brooks pulled Carter's personnel file for the third time that day. The record showed a straightforward career path: basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, advanced individual training with unremarkable scores, a series of support roles that explained nothing about her tactical knowledge or physical capabilities. And then there was the classification flag, a single line of code that blocked access to records beyond a certain date, records that required authorization levels Dahlia did not possess. She picked up her secure phone and dialed a number she had been told to use only in exceptional circumstances. "This is Brooks, intelligence section. I need a deep background on a trainee. Carter, Fern. The file has classification barriers I cannot access." The voice on the other end asked a question. "Why?" Dahlia looked at the flag on her screen, the one that suggested Carter's file went somewhere far beyond a simple training facility. "Because nothing about her makes sense. And in my experience, when things do not make sense, it is because someone is hiding something important." Notice how the story is shifting? Those small details adding up? That is not coincidence. If you are connecting the dots faster than Jasper is, you are exactly where you should be. Hit that like button if you appreciate stories where patience pays off. The pieces are falling into place, and the picture they are forming is about to blow everyone's mind. Stay sharp. The Combat Lifesaver training module began at 0700 in Building 12, a converted warehouse that still smelled faintly of motor oil despite years of medical use. Chief Warrant Officer Ronan Clark ran the session with the quiet competence of someone who had stopped counting the lives he had saved or lost. "Today we cover hemorrhage control," he announced to the assembled trainees. "When someone is bleeding out, you have minutes to act, sometimes seconds. What you do in those moments determines whether they go home to their families or come home in a box." He held up a tourniquet, the standard-issue CAT model that had become as familiar to modern soldiers as their rifles. "I want a volunteer to demonstrate proper application." Jasper, observing from the side, pushed Carter forward. "Our new tactical genius should show us what she knows." Carter stepped to the front without hesitation. Clark handed her the tourniquet and gestured to the training dummy. What happened next made Clark pause. Carter's hands moved with unconscious expertise, high and tight on the limb, 2 inches above the wound site. Windlass turned until the bleeding stopped, then secured, but it was her sequence that caught his attention. "March protocol," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Massive hemorrhage, airway, respiration, circulation, hypothermia." Clark's eyebrows rose. "That is Combat Casualty Care Committee terminology. Where did you learn it?" "Advanced First Aid course," Carter replied. "It is covered in the manual." "It is not." Clark studied her with new intensity. "That protocol is taught to 18 Delta Special Forces medics and combat rescue personnel. It is not in any manual available to general soldiers." The room had gone quiet. Even Jasper sensed something shifting, though he lacked the context to understand what. Carter met Clark's gaze steadily. Perhaps I misremembered where I learned it. It was not a satisfying answer. Clark knew it. Carter knew it. But the CWO had spent 30 years in military medicine, and he had learned when to push and when to wait. Your technique is exemplary, he said finally. Perhaps you could assist with the practical demonstrations today. Of course, Chief. Throughout the session, Carter moved among the trainees with quiet efficiency. She corrected grip angles without condescension. She explained pressure points with the patience of someone who had taught these skills under circumstances far more dire than a classroom. When a young private named Henry Walsh, no relation to the major, struggled with the sequence, Carter knelt beside him and guided his hands through the motions. You are thinking too much, she told him. Your hands already know what to do. Let them remember. Henry's technique improved immediately. He looked at her with something approaching wonder. How do you know all this? I mean, they said you just came from a support role. Carter smiled, the first genuine expression she had shown since arriving. Some things you learn in places that are not on any training schedule. From the doorway, Sergeant First Class Aiden Foster watched the exchange. He had been tracking Carter since the obstacle course, noting the inconsistencies between her file and her capabilities. Now, watching her teach combat medicine with the ease of someone who had applied it under fire, his suspicions crystallized into something more concrete. He pulled out his phone and sent a brief message to Dahlia Brooks. You were right. Something is not adding up. Meet me at 1900. The hand-to-hand combat training took place in a converted gymnasium with mats that had absorbed decades of sweat and ambition. Jasper ran these sessions personally, relishing the opportunity for physical dominance that classroom instruction denied him. Pair up, he commanded. We are working takedowns today. I want to see proper form, proper aggression, proper execution. He scanned the room until his eyes found Carter. Actually, change of plans. Carter, front and center. You are going to help me demonstrate. Carter stepped onto the mat, her posture relaxed, her weight evenly distributed in ways that suggested balance came naturally to her. I am going to show everyone how to defend against a rear attack, Jasper announced, positioning himself behind her. When someone grabs you from behind, your instinct is to struggle forward. That is wrong. That is how you get controlled. He wrapped his arms around Carter from behind, pulling her against his chest with more force than the demonstration required. See? Trapped. Helpless. This is where most people panic. What happened next took less than a second. Carter's body dropped, creating space where his grip expected resistance. Her hips shifted in a motion that seemed almost casual, and suddenly Jasper was stumbling forward, his arms empty, his balance compromised, while Carter stood 2 feet away in a ready stance she had not consciously adopted. She caught herself immediately, returning to a passive posture, but the damage was done. The gymnasium had gone silent. 30 trainees had just watched their tormentor get handled like an amateur by the woman he had been bullying since her arrival. Jasper's face flushed crimson. What was that? I did not tell you to counter. Reflex, Carter said. I apologize, instructor. Muscle memory from previous training. What training? His voice had risen, anger breaking through professional composure. What previous training teaches you to move like that? Basic combatives course. The technique is in the manual. It was not. Everyone in the room knew it was not. The movement Carter had executed came from somewhere else entirely, somewhere that trained responses into reflexes so deep they could not be suppressed even when the conscious mind demanded passivity. Get off my mat, Jasper growled. You are done for today. Carter bowed her head slightly and walked to the edge of the gymnasium. Behind her, Jasper's hands were shaking with a combination of rage and something he refused to name, fear. The weapons range stretched along the northern boundary of the facility, concrete and steel, designed to contain the controlled violence of marksmanship training. Edwin Ford presided over the afternoon session with the smug satisfaction of a man who believed himself an expert in all things ballistic. Qualification course, he announced. 50 targets at varied distances. 40 hits qualifies you as marksman, 45 for sharpshooter, 48 for expert. Any questions? No one spoke. Carter, Ford singled her out with a pointing finger. Since you impressed everyone with your obstacle course time and your tactical assessments and your combatives reflexes, let us see how you handle an actual weapon. You are up first. Carter approached the firing line, her issued M4 slung across her chest. She performed her safety checks with mechanical precision, the same checks she had performed thousands of times before. Behind her, Jasper whispered to Bruno, "Watch this. Watch her fail when it actually matters." The first target popped up at 25 meters. Carter's shot was center mass before the target fully emerged. Second target, third, fourth. Her rhythm was metronomic, her reloads seamless, her transitions between targets fluid in ways that spoke of muscle memory, developed under conditions far more stressful than a qualification course. When the smoke cleared, the range scorekeeper consulted his tablet twice before announcing the result. 50 impacts, 49 center mass, 1 high right. Silence descended like a physical weight. "That is not possible," Ford said. "Run the diagnostics again." "I ran them 3 times, Sergeant. 50 targets, 50 hits, 49 kill shots." Expert qualification was 48. Carter had exceeded it by 2 points, while demonstrating accuracy that matched or exceeded most special operations personnel. "What unit did you say you trained with?" Major Walsh's voice cut through the stunned silence. He had appeared at the range without anyone noticing his approach. "Support battalion, sir. Fort Bragg. Support personnel do not shoot like that." Carter ejected her magazine, cleared her weapon, and set it on the counter. "Perhaps I had good instructors, sir." Walsh studied her for a long moment, his skepticism warring with something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or the uncomfortable recognition that he had dismissed someone who clearly deserved more attention. "Ford, I want her scores verified by an independent scorer, and I want her qualification records pulled from her previous assignment." "Yes, sir." As Walsh walked away, Jasper materialized at Carter's side. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I do not know what game you are playing, but I'm going to find out. And when I do, when I prove you are a fraud, you are going to wish you had never set foot on this facility." Carter met his gaze without flinching. "Is there something you need, instructor? I need you to understand something." He leaned closer, his breath hot against her ear. "This is my facility. These are my people. You are nothing here, less than nothing. And no amount of trick shots or fancy footwork is going to change that." "Understood, instructor," but there was something in Carter's eyes that Jasper could not read. A patience that extended beyond submission. A stillness that suggested waiting rather than weakness. He did not recognize it for what it was, the calm of someone who had faced threats far more dangerous than an insecure ranger with an ego problem. That evening, in the intelligence office, Dahlia Brooks and Aiden Foster convened over coffee and classified queries. "I ran her through every database I have access to," Dahlia said. "Standard personnel records show exactly what her file claims. Basic training, support roles, nothing remarkable. But," Foster could hear the unspoken continuation, "but there is a classification barrier on her record starting 18 months ago. I cannot see what is behind it, but I can see that it exists. And the authorization level required to access those files is higher than mine." Foster processed this information. "What kind of authorization level? The kind that handles special operations personnel, the kind that protects people who do not officially exist." They looked at each other across the desk, the implications settling over them like a weight. "Who is she?" Foster asked. "I do not know, but I think Admiral Brennan does." Dahlia pulled up a video feed from the morning formation, the moment when Brennan had walked past Carter during inspection. "Watch this." The footage showed Brennan pausing fractionally as he passed Carter's position. His eyes flickered to her collar, to the barely visible edge of ink beneath the fabric. His expression shifted, just for a moment, into something that might have been recognition. "He knows," Foster said. "He knows who she is. And he has not said anything to anyone." Dahlia leaned back in her chair. "Which means whatever is happening here, it is happening with command approval. The question is, what exactly is happening?" The night passed without incident, but sleep came difficult to everyone who had witnessed the day's events. In the barracks, whispers passed from bunk to bunk. In the instructor's quarters, Jasper Chambers stared at the ceiling and planned his next move. In the command building, Admiral Brennan reviewed files that no one else at the facility was authorized to see. And in her corner bunk, Fern Carter lay perfectly still, her breathing even, her eyes open in the darkness. She had 72 hours of footage on the body cam concealed in her uniform. 72 hours of documented harassment, safety violations, and institutional failures. 72 hours of evidence that would end careers and change policies and, hopefully, prevent anyone else from experiencing what the women at this facility had endured. But she needed more. She needed the pattern to be undeniable. She needed Jasper Chambers to dig his own grave so deep that no amount of friendly connections could pull him out. Patience, she reminded herself. The right moment comes to those who wait for it. Career transitions in high-stakes professions require specialized financial planning. When your work involves classified operations, deployment cycles, and security clearances, standard financial advice does not cut it. Portfolio strategies need to account for irregular income patterns, international assignments, and unique tax situations. Insurance coverage must address occupational risks that typical policies do not cover. Retirement planning becomes complex when pension systems vary by service branch and years of classified work. Smart financial management means working with advisors who understand the specific challenges of military and defense careers, protecting assets while maintaining operational security requirements. Dawn arrived with a surprise announcement. The public address system crackled at 0530, a full 30 minutes earlier than the normal wake-up call. All personnel report to Range 7. Live fire exercise. Full combat load. This is not a drill. Carter dressed with mechanical efficiency, her body moving through familiar routines while her mind cataloged the implications. Surprise live fire exercises were unusual. Surprise live fire exercises, announced 30 minutes before execution, were reckless. At Range 7, she found controlled chaos. Instructors were setting up targets and barricades with obvious haste. Safety officers were conspicuously absent from their usual positions. And Jasper Chambers was personally overseeing the loading of ammunition that had not gone through standard verification procedures. "Form up," Bruno Garrett bellowed. 3 ranks. Combat intervals." Carter took her position, her eyes tracking every deviation from protocol. The safety net behind the first firing position had been moved. The ceasefire sirens were mounted on manual triggers rather than automated sensors, and the live ammunition boxes bore lot numbers she did not recognize. Something was wrong. Something was deliberately wrong. The exercise began with basic marksmanship drills, but it quickly escalated. Jasper added moving targets without warning. Bruno introduced ricocheting steel plates at angles that sent fragments unpredictably. When a young soldier named Private First Class Ryan Cooper nearly took a round skip to the face, Carter felt her patience approach its limit. And then the unthinkable happened. The left flank safety officer abandoned his post. Whether through instruction or intimidation, he simply walked away, leaving a critical danger zone unmonitored. 3 trainees were in that zone, their backs to a barricade that had been positioned incorrectly. Carter saw the geometry. She saw the rifle barrel swinging toward a target that would produce a ricochet directly into the unprotected soldiers. She saw Jasper smiling at the chaos he had created. She had less than 2 seconds to decide. Her voice erupted from somewhere primal, somewhere that had commanded men and women in far worse circumstances than this. "Cease fire! Cease fire now!" The range went silent. Every weapon dropped. Every head turned toward the source of the command, a voice that carried authority they had not heard before. Carter was already moving, crossing the firing line with purpose that brooked no resistance. You, and you, clear the left flank now. Martinez, secure that ammunition. Cooper, call for the medical officer. This exercise is terminated." For 3 seconds, no one moved. The authority in her voice was so absolute, so natural, that even Jasper hesitated. Then everyone obeyed. The trainees in the danger zone evacuated. The ammunition was secured. A medic arrived to check the soldier who had nearly been hit. And throughout it all, Carter directed the recovery with the precision of someone who had managed far worse crises. Admiral Brennan arrived 45 seconds later, having been alerted by the cessation of weapons fire. He took in the scene, the improperly positioned barriers, the missing safety officers, the live ammunition that had not been properly verified. And he looked at Carter, standing in the center of the range, still issuing orders with the voice of command. "What happened here?" Jasper stepped forward, his face arranged in practiced concern. "Sir, the new trainee panicked and called an unnecessary ceasefire. I was just about to reset the exercise when she started issuing orders without authority." Brennan's gaze did not move from Carter. "Trainee Carter, report." Carter snapped to attention, her bearing perfect despite the chaos around her. "Sir, multiple safety violations were observed. The left flank safety officer abandoned his post. Ricochet angles from the steel targets created danger to personnel in unsupervised zones. Live ammunition had not been verified through standard protocols. I made the assessment that immediate cessation was necessary to prevent casualties. She overreacted, Jasper insisted. I had everything under control. Did you? Brennan's voice was flat. It was not a question. Major Walsh approached, tablet in hand. Sir, preliminary assessment confirms what Trainee Carter described. We have at least 6 protocol violations I can see from initial review. This exercise should never have been conducted without proper safety certification. Jasper's face shifted through several emotions. Anger, denial, fear. Sir, I can explain. The protocols were followed, but some last-minute changes. Instructor Chambers. Brennan's voice cut through the excuse like a blade through silk. You will report to my office at 1400 hours. Bring your training logs and your certification records. Sir, yes, sir. Brennan turned to Carter. Trainee Carter, that was the most professional safety response I have observed in 20 years. Your assessment was correct. Your actions were appropriate. Dismissed. Carter saluted and withdrew, but not before she caught the look that passed between Brennan and Walsh. A look that said, this is just the beginning. We are at the point of no return now. Everything that has been building is about to explode. If your heart is racing, if you cannot wait to see the look on Jasper's face, hit that notification bell, because the next 5 minutes contain the single most satisfying moment you will see all week. Trust me, you do not want to miss 1 second. The afternoon brought a summons that surprised no one who had witnessed the morning's events. Carter was called to the commander's building, escorted by an MP who treated her with unusual deference. Admiral Brennan's office was Spartan, decorated only with campaign ribbons, unit photos, and a single-frame metal display. Carter stood at attention before his desk, her eyes fixed on the wall behind him. Brennan dismissed the MP with a gesture. When the door closed, he remained silent for a long moment, studying the woman before him. At ease, Captain, the title hung in the air. Carter's posture did not change, but something shifted in the atmosphere of the room. How long were you planning to maintain cover? Brennan asked. As long as necessary to document patterns, sir. I have 72 hours of footage. Brennan nodded slowly. The situation at the range accelerated our timeline. We are making this official now. He opened a file on his desk, though both of them knew he had memorized its contents long ago. Captain Fern Carter, United States Naval Special Warfare Development Group, 8 years special operations, 3 Navy crosses, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, Purple Heart, direct action missions classified at levels I cannot access even with my clearance. Carter remained silent. You were sent here under the Special Operations Instructor Integration Program. Your mission was to evaluate training standards and investigate misconduct reports that had been buried through improper channels. Brennan closed the file. What have you found? Systematic harassment of female personnel, safety violations that have been overlooked or actively covered up, instructors who use their positions to abuse rather than train, and at least 12 formal complaints that were dismissed without proper investigation. Jasper Chambers? The primary instigator, but not the only problem. The culture itself is compromised. Bruno Garrett, Erica Vaughn, Edwin Ford, they are symptoms of a larger disease. Remove them without addressing the underlying infection, and new versions will emerge. Brennan leaned back in his chair. You could have revealed yourself at any point. You could have stopped the harassment on day 1. If I had, I would have stopped them from harassing me. This way, we stop them from harassing anyone. There was a knock at the door. Lieutenant Dahlia Brooks entered, tablet in hand, her expression urgent. Sir, I have corroborating testimony from 12 prior female trainees dating back 18 months, and the footage Captain Carter collected matches patterns I have been documenting independently. Brennan took the tablet, scanned its contents, and allowed himself a small smile. It seems we have built a comprehensive case, Lieutenant. Sir, there is more. Dahlia hesitated. Jasper Chambers is organizing something for tonight's formation. He has been telling people that Carter is being removed from the program. He is planning some kind of public humiliation. Carter and Brennan exchanged a look. Let him plan, Brennan said. In fact, let him believe his plan is working. I want every instructor who has participated in this culture present at tonight's formation. Every witness, every camera. Sir, when the truth comes out, I want there to be no doubt, no room for denial, no possibility of spinning the narrative. He turned to Carter. Are you prepared for what happens next? Carter's expression remained calm, but there was something in her eyes now. Not anger, not triumph, something older, something that had seen enough injustice to know that even righteous exposure carried weight. "I have been prepared for this since I arrived, sir." "Then let us give them a formation they will never forget." The evening sky over Joint Training Facility, Bravo, was painted in shades of amber and crimson as 170 soldiers assembled on the parade ground. Word had spread through the ranks like wildfire. Something was happening tonight, something major. Jasper Chambers stood at the front of the formation, his crew positioned strategically around him, Bruno on his right, Edwin on his left. Erica watching from the instructor line. They had orchestrated everything. The positioning, the timing, the final humiliation of the woman who had embarrassed them all. Carter took her place in the front rank, as ordered. Her uniform was immaculate, her bearing was perfect, and somewhere beneath her collar, a fragment of ink waited to change everything. "Formation! A 10 hut!" The soldiers snapped to attention as Admiral Brennan approached, his dress blues sharp against the fading light. Major Walsh walked 3 paces behind, his expression unreadable. "This evening's formation," Brennan announced, his voice carrying across the silent parade ground, "marks a significant transition for this facility. We have reached a crossroads, and the decisions we make tonight will determine the path forward." Jasper smiled. Here it came, the announcement of Carter's removal, the validation of everything he had worked to achieve. "Before we proceed, I want to recognize someone who has demonstrated exceptional judgment under pressure." Brennan's gaze swept the formation. Earlier today, this individual identified multiple safety violations during a live fire exercise and took immediate action to prevent potential casualties. Their intervention may have saved lives. The smile froze on Jasper's face. This was not the script he had written. "However, before we discuss that, we must address certain matters that have been brought to my attention regarding the conduct of our training staff." Brennan paused, letting the silence build. In the instructor line, Erica Vaughn's composure flickered. Edwin Ford's hand trembled slightly at his side. "Instructor Chambers, step forward." Jasper straightened his shoulders and walked to the front of the formation, still believing he was about to be vindicated. "You have been accused of systematic harassment of female personnel, of creating hostile training environments, of deliberately violating safety protocols, of using your position to intimidate and abuse those under your authority. Sir, those accusations are—" "I am not finished, instructor." The temperature of the parade ground seemed to drop 10 degrees. "These accusations have been documented by multiple independent sources. They are supported by 72 hours of video evidence collected over the past 4 days. And they are corroborated by testimony from 12 prior trainees whose complaints were improperly dismissed." Jasper's face drained of color. His eyes swept the formation, searching for Carter, searching for the source of his destruction. He found her standing exactly where she had been, silent, still, waiting. "You want to know who gathered this evidence?" Brennan's voice had gone cold. "You want to know who documented your every violation, your every abuse, your every failure of leadership?" He turned toward Carter. "Step forward." Carter moved with the precision of someone who had marched to far more dangerous drummers. She took her position beside Brennan, facing the formation, facing Jasper, facing the truth that was about to unmake him. "This is Carter," Jasper spat. "She is nothing. A trainee, a diversity quota. She does not have the authority to—" "This," Brennan interrupted, "is Captain Fern Carter, United States Naval Special Warfare Development Group." The formation rippled, heads turned, phones appeared, recording every second. "SEAL Team 6, someone whispered. The whisper spread like fire through dry grass. Jasper's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. "Captain Carter was assigned to this facility under the Special Operations Instructor Integration Program," Brennan continued. "Her mission was to evaluate our training standards and investigate reports of misconduct that had been improperly handled. She has been documenting your behavior since the moment she arrived." "That is impossible," Jasper's voice cracked. "She is too small. She is too quiet. She does not look like—" "Like what, instructor? Like a special operator? Like someone who has completed missions you cannot imagine? Like someone who has earned more decorations for valor than you have earned reprimands for conduct?" It was Major Walsh who spoke next. "During my tour in Kandahar, I served alongside DevGru operators. I saw them in action. I learned to recognize them by the way they moved, the way they assessed threats. the way they never showed their true capabilities until the moment demanded it. He looked at Carter with something approaching respect. I should have seen it on day one. The way you fell during formation, the way you scanned the crowd in half a second, the way you let us underestimate you while you gathered everything you needed. Jasper made one final desperate play. He lunged toward Carter, his hand reaching for her collar, perhaps to prove she was not what they claimed, perhaps to make one last assertion of dominance over someone he had dismissed as weak. He never reached her. Carter moved, not with aggression, but with the fluid economy of someone who had rendered threats harmless thousands of times before. Jasper found himself on his knees, his arm extended at an angle that promised pain if he resisted. But that was not what made the formation gasp. The movement had torn her uniform sleeve at the shoulder, exposing what lay beneath. The tattoo was impossible to mistake, a Navy SEAL trident, golden even in the fading light. Below it, a skull with crossbones, the letters DevGru in block military script, 3 hash marks indicating deployments, and coordinates that anyone who had served in Iraq would recognize, the latitude and longitude of Baghdad. Silence fell over the parade ground, complete, absolute, the kind of silence that precedes earthquakes. Then Admiral Brennan spoke the words that would echo through the facility for years to come. "Captain on deck." He snapped to attention. His hand rose in a crisp salute. Major Walsh followed, then the instructors, then the formation, 170 soldiers coming to attention in a wave that swept across the parade ground like a physical force. Jasper Chambers remained on his knees, his arm still controlled by a woman he had tried to destroy, watching his entire world collapse around him. Part 2. The silence held for 3 eternal seconds. 170 soldiers stood at attention, their salutes frozen in the amber light of sunset, their eyes fixed on the woman they had dismissed as weak, as unworthy, as nothing. The woman who now stood revealed as something far beyond their comprehension. The tattoo seemed to pulse in the fading light. Navy SEAL trident, its golden eagle and anchor unmistakable, even from 20 feet away. The skull beneath it, grinning with the dark humor that special operators developed to survive what they witnessed. DevGru, in block letters that spelled out the most elite unit in American special operations history. 3 deployment hash marks, coordinates that anyone with Middle East experience would recognize instantly. Around the parade ground, reactions cascaded like dominoes falling in slow motion. In the 3rd rank, Corporal Clover Hayes pressed both hands to her mouth, tears streaming down her face unchecked. The woman she had tried to warn, the woman she had watched absorb abuse without complaint, the woman she had pitied as another victim of the system, was something beyond anything she had imagined. Staff Sergeant Hector Silva felt his knees weaken. He had stayed neutral during the harassment, telling himself it was not his place to intervene. Now he understood that his neutrality had been complicity, and the person he had failed to defend was someone who could have ended every confrontation with a single word. Private First Class Henry Walsh stood frozen, his mind racing through every interaction he had witnessed. The obstacle course time that seemed impossible, the tactical assessment that exceeded instructor knowledge, the weapons qualification that matched special operations standards. Every piece suddenly fit into a picture he could not believe he had failed to see. Lieutenant Dahlia Brooks, watching from the command center monitors, allowed herself a small smile of vindication. Her instincts had been correct. The classification barriers on Carter's file had hidden exactly what she suspected, but even she had not anticipated this, had not imagined that the quiet trainee was among the most decorated operators in modern military history. Chief Warrant Officer Ronan Clark nodded slowly, pieces clicking into place. The March protocol reference, the tourniquet technique, the way she had guided injured personnel with the calm precision of someone who had performed these actions under fire. He had sensed something extraordinary beneath her humble exterior. The reality exceeded his suspicions. And Jasper Chambers remained on his knees, his arms still locked in Carter's controlled grip, his face cycling through emotions too numerous to catalog: denial, shock, fear, and beneath it all, the dawning horror of a man watching his entire world collapse in real time. "That is not possible." His voice emerged as barely a whisper. "SEAL Team 6 does not take women. They never have. This is some kind of trick." Carter released his arm with clinical precision and stepped back. Her posture remained perfect, her expression unchanged, but there was something in her eyes now that had not been there before. Not triumph, something older, the weight of what came next. Instructor Chambers is partially correct, Admiral Brennan announced to the formation. Until recently, Naval Special Warfare Development Group did not officially include female operators in direct action roles. He paused, letting the implications settle. Captain Carter was part of a classified pilot program that began 8 years ago. Her existence, along with that of 6 other female operators, was not acknowledged publicly. Their missions were not recorded in accessible databases. Their contributions to national security remain classified at levels most of you will never possess clearance to access. In the formation, phones continued recording. This moment would live forever in military history, shared across networks that would carry it around the world before midnight. I served with Captain Carter's unit during Operation Resolute Thunder in 2018, Brennan continued. I watched her lead a 6-person team through hostile territory to extract 3 captured intelligence officers. I watched her make decisions under fire that saved 17 lives. And I watched her take wounds that would have ended most careers while refusing evacuation until her mission was complete. Major Derek Walsh stepped forward, his face transformed by something that might have been shame. When she assessed that tactical scenario in class, I should have known. The water tower reference, the Market District exfil route, those were not theoretical observations. She had been there. She had operated in that exact terrain. The technique she used in combatives training, Chief Warrant Officer Ronan Clark added, from the instructor line. The March protocol she referenced. Those are not taught to regular personnel. They are drilled into operators who need them to survive situations most soldiers never face. Jasper struggled to his feet, his dignity in tatters, his authority evaporating with each passing second. Sir, I did not know. How was I supposed to know? She acted like what? Carter spoke for the first time since the reveal, and her voice carried across the parade ground with command presence that silenced every other sound. Like someone small, someone quiet, someone you could dismiss without consequence? She took one step toward him, and Jasper actually flinched. You did not target me because I was weak, Instructor Chambers. You targeted me because you thought I was weak. There is a difference that has now been documented in 72 hours of video evidence showing systematic harassment, safety violations, and abuse of authority. I was just maintaining standards. You were maintaining nothing except your own ego. Carter's voice remained level, but there was steel beneath the calm. In 4 days, I watched you trip a soldier at formation, sabotage training equipment, create dangerous conditions during live fire exercises, intimidate witnesses, threaten careers, and dismiss 12 formal complaints from women who trusted the system to protect them. She turned to face the formation, to face the soldiers who had watched her persecution in silence. The women who came before me, the ones who filed those complaints, they were not weak either. They were soldiers who believed that speaking up would matter. They believed that the institution they served would respond to injustice. They were wrong, because men like Instructor Chambers had corrupted the system designed to protect them. Corporal Clover Hayes was crying silently in the 3rd rank. Beside her, other female soldiers wiped tears they had held for months, years, entire careers. That ends tonight, Brennan said. Military police, take Instructor Chambers, Instructor Garrett, Instructor Vaughn, and Sergeant Ford into custody pending investigation. They are relieved of all duties effective immediately. 4 MPs materialized from the edges of the parade ground, their approach silent and professional. Bruno tried to run. He made it approximately 3 steps before 2 MPs intercepted him with efficiency that suggested they had been hoping for exactly this outcome. Erica Vaughn did not resist, but her face had gone pale as bone. I was just trying to fit in. I was just trying to survive in a system that you were trying to survive by helping them destroy others. Carter's voice held no mercy. Every woman you excluded, every harassment you enabled, every complaint you helped dismiss, that is on your record now, permanently. Edwin Ford said nothing at all. He simply surrendered his credentials and allowed himself to be escorted away. His certainties about the order of things shattered beyond repair. Jasper was the last to be processed. As the MP secured his hands, he turned back toward Carter with something desperate in his eyes. You set me up. You came here specifically to destroy me. No. Carter met his gaze without flinching. I came here to document what was already happening. You destroyed yourself, Instructor Chambers. Every time you chose cruelty over leadership. Every time you chose ego over duty. Every time you looked at someone smaller than you and saw an opportunity instead of a responsibility. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a level only he could hear. I gave you 4 days of chances. 4 days when you could have treated me with basic human respect. 4 days when you could have been the leader your rank required you to be. You failed every single opportunity. That is not entrapment. That is character. The MPs led him away. The parade ground fell silent once more. Admiral Brennan surveyed the formation, the weight of what came next visible in his bearing. What you have witnessed tonight is the beginning, not the end. Tomorrow, investigators from the Inspector General's office will arrive to conduct comprehensive interviews. Every soldier who witnessed misconduct is encouraged to come forward. Every complaint that was previously dismissed will be reopened. He paused, allowing the implications to settle. This facility has failed its people. I have failed its people. That failure ends now, but the work of rebuilding trust will take time. It will require honesty. It will require accountability at every level, and it will require each of you to decide what kind of military you want to serve in. Justice served? Not quite done yet. If you loved watching consequences catch up to people who deserve them, we have got dozens more stories like this. Real people, real situations, real outcomes. Click that playlist link in the description. And here is a question that will keep you up tonight. What happens when someone who has been hiding in plain sight gets one more call? The week that followed transformed Joint Training Facility Bravo in ways that would ripple through the military for years. Colonel Naomi Briggs arrived from the Inspector General's office on day 2, accompanied by a team of investigators whose reputation for thoroughness preceded them. They established operations in the conference center and began systematic interviews that would eventually encompass over 200 personnel. The evidence against Jasper Chambers proved overwhelming. 72 hours of body cam footage documented harassment ranging from verbal abuse to deliberate equipment sabotage. Witness testimony corroborated patterns that extended back 18 months. And the 12 previously dismissed complaints, when re-examined with proper oversight, revealed a systematic failure of the reporting system itself. Dishonorable discharge, Briggs announced during the preliminary findings briefing. Loss of all benefits. Recommendation for civilian charges related to assault and creating dangerous conditions. His career is finished. Bruno Garrett received similar treatment. His role as Jasper's enforcer had been documented extensively, and additional witnesses came forward once they understood protection was genuine. He would face his own discharge proceedings within 30 days. Erica Vaughn's case proved more complex. She had not directly participated in harassment, but her enabling behavior and active suppression of complaints made her complicit. The decision came down to reduction in rank, mandatory counseling, and reassignment to a non-instructor position at a facility 3,000 miles away. Edwin Ford chose retirement in lieu of court-martial. His credentials were revoked, his pension reduced, and his name added to databases that would prevent future government employment. He left the facility without speaking to anyone, his certainties about the proper order of things demolished beyond reconstruction. Major Derek Walsh received a written reprimand and mandatory bias training. His case was complicated by rank and the fact that his sins were those of omission rather than commission. He had not participated in harassment, but he had failed to prevent it. His command track was ended, his career trajectory permanently altered. The institutional failures went beyond individual actors, Briggs noted in her interim report. Systems designed to protect personnel were compromised by informal networks of loyalty that prioritized unit cohesion over accountability. Addressing this requires structural reform, not merely personnel changes. Professional certification and legal protection matter more than ever in military careers. Advanced training programs offer specialized credentials that open doors to leadership positions. Legal services help navigate the complex intersection of military justice, employment law, and civil rights. When your career involves operational security and institutional politics, having expert guidance is not optional. Educational programs tailored for active duty and veterans provide flexible paths to advanced degrees. Legal representation experienced in military culture understands the unique challenges of proving misconduct, protecting whistleblowers, and ensuring accountability at all levels. The community transformation began almost immediately. On day 3, Admiral Brennan convened a base-wide assembly to announce new protocols. Body cameras would be mandatory for all instructors during training sessions. Independent observers would be present during all physical training exercises. Anonymous feedback systems would be implemented with guaranteed follow-up from external investigators. Quarterly audits would be conducted by third-party organizations with no institutional ties. These measures are not punishments, Brennan clarified. They are protections. Protections for trainees who deserve to learn without fear. Protections for instructors who maintain professional standards, and protections for an institution that must earn back the trust it has lost. The reaction among personnel split along predictable lines. Those who had maintained integrity welcomed the changes. Those who had benefited from the old system complained about oversight and bureaucracy, and those who had suffered in silence began, slowly, to believe that change might actually be possible. Corporal Clover Hayes was among the first to request a formal meeting with Captain Carter. "I want to understand," she said, sitting across from Carter in a conference room that had once hosted meetings designed to suppress complaints like hers. "You could have stopped all of this on day one. You could have revealed yourself immediately and ended the harassment before it started. Why did you let them treat you that way?" Carter considered the question with the gravity it deserved. "If I had pulled rank on the first day, I would have stopped them from harassing me. One person protected, but the system that enabled their behavior would have remained intact. The next woman who arrived after I left would have faced the same treatment from the same people operating under the same assumptions." She leaned forward, her eyes holding Clover's with intensity. "Change does not happen because one person escapes injustice. Change happens when the injustice itself becomes impossible to continue. By documenting the pattern, by collecting evidence that could not be dismissed or explained away, by letting them demonstrate exactly who they were when they thought no one was watching, we built a case that could not be ignored." "But it hurt," Clover whispered. "I watched them treat you terribly, and I could not do anything." "You did do something. You warned me about Jasper's history on my first day. You helped me when I fell in the mud. You kept records of what you witnessed, even when you thought no one would ever read them." Carter reached across the table and briefly touched Clover's hand. "Courage is not the absence of fear, Corporal. Courage is doing the right thing when doing the right thing is difficult. You demonstrated courage every day you stayed here and refused to become like them." Clover left that meeting with something she had not felt in 18 months of service at the facility: hope. Private First Class Henry Walsh, the young soldier who had struggled with tourniquet application, requested a different kind of meeting. "Ma'am, I need to apologize." Carter raised an eyebrow. "For what, Private?" "For not saying anything. I watched Instructor Chambers trip you at formation. I watched them sabotage your equipment. I watched them mock you and exclude you and create dangerous situations. And I stayed silent because I was afraid of what would happen if I spoke up. You are speaking up now. Only because it is safe now. Only because someone else already did the hard part." His voice cracked with something between shame and determination. "That is not good enough. That is not who I want to be." Carter studied him for a long moment. "Private Walsh, you are 20 years old. You have been in the military for less than 2 years. The people who were abusing their authority had decades of experience and institutional protection. The fact that you did not single-handedly dismantle a corrupt system does not make you a coward. It makes you human. But the measure of character is not whether you were brave in the past. It is whether you choose to be brave going forward." She stood, signaling that the meeting was concluding. "You came to me today to admit your silence and commit to something better. That took courage. Now the question is, what you do with that courage tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day for the rest of your career." Henry left with a burden partially lifted and a mission clearly defined. Sergeant First Class Aidan Foster and Lieutenant Dahlia Brooks received commendations for their independent documentation efforts. Their work had provided crucial corroboration for Carter's evidence, demonstrating that the problems at the facility had been recognized by multiple observers. "We suspected something was wrong for months," Foster admitted during the commendation ceremony, "but suspicion without proof is just rumor. Lieutenant Brooks had the intelligence training to document properly, and I had the operational experience to recognize what constituted evidence versus hearsay. The lesson," Dahlia added, "is that systems fail when individuals assume someone else will handle the problem. We each thought the other was taking action. It was not until Captain Carter arrived that we realized we needed to coordinate." Chief Warrant Officer Ronan Clark received a formal appointment to the new Oversight Committee. His medical training and observational skills made him ideal for identifying the physical and psychological signs of abuse that often went unrecognized. In combat medicine, we learn to see what others miss, he explained to the committee during its inaugural meeting. A soldier who flinches when a superior approaches, a trainee whose performance drops without explanation, equipment failures that happen too consistently to be coincidental. These are symptoms of a disease, and like any disease, early detection improves outcomes. Master Sergeant Tabitha Moore, who had witnessed the culture problems for years without finding effective ways to address them, became the facility's first trainee advocate. Her role was to serve as an independent resource for personnel who felt unable to use standard reporting channels. The old system required victims to report through their chain of command, she noted, but when the chain of command was part of the problem, reporting became impossible. My job is to provide an alternative path, a way to raise concerns that does not require trusting the people you are concerned about. 3 weeks after the formation revelation, the Pentagon announced that Joint Training Facility Bravo would serve as a pilot program for nationwide reform. The protocols developed in response to the scandal would be evaluated, refined, and potentially implemented across all training facilities. This is not about one facility or one scandal, the press release stated. This is about creating institutional structures that make misconduct impossible to sustain. When transparency is default and accountability is consistent, the conditions that enable abuse cannot develop. Media coverage of the story reached national prominence. Female SEAL Team 6 operator exposes systematic harassment became a headline that spawned think pieces, policy discussions, and renewed attention to gender integration across all military branches. Carter declined all interview requests. Her mission had been to document and reform, not to become a public figure. But her presence at the facility spoke louder than any press appearance could have. 3 months later, the transformation was visible in every aspect of daily operations. Female trainee retention had increased by 340%. Performance scores improved across all demographics. Harassment reports dropped to 0, not because problems were being hidden, but because the conditions that enabled them had been systematically dismantled. Carter conducted advanced tactical training sessions that drew observers from facilities across the country. The soldiers who had witnessed her reveal, who had watched her absorb abuse without complaint and respond with excellence under pressure, now learned directly from someone whose expertise was beyond question. Real strength is not about how loud you are, she told a class of graduating trainees during their final briefing. Real strength is not about physical size or aggressive posture or dominating those around you. Real strength is having power and choosing not to abuse it. Every day, you will have that choice. Make the right one. Clover Hayes graduated at the top of her class. She received the Honor Graduate Award from Carter's hands, a moment that reduced half the audience to tears. Henry Walsh completed his training with distinction and was recommended for leadership development. The young man who had apologized for his silence became an advocate for speaking up, mentoring newer trainees through the challenges he had faced. Staff Sergeant Hector Silva, who had remained neutral during the scandal and shifted to active support only after the reveal, underwent his own transformation. He became one of the most vocal proponents of the new protocols, his conversion from bystander to advocate demonstrating that change was possible at every level. Petty Officer First Class Iris Montgomery, who had been one of Jasper's earlier victims and whose complaint had been dismissed 18 months before Carter arrived, received a formal apology from the facility command. Her case was reopened, additional evidence was gathered, and she was offered the opportunity to continue her career with a clean slate. "I almost quit," she confided to Carter during a private moment. "After they dismissed my complaint, I almost walked away from everything I had worked for. The only reason I stayed was because I was too stubborn to let them win." "That stubbornness saved you," Carter replied. "And it helped save everyone who came after." Admiral Brennan, in his final assessment before rotating to his next assignment, summarized the transformation with characteristic directness. "This facility was broken when I arrived. The culture had been corrupted by individuals who prioritized personal power over institutional mission. The systems designed to prevent such corruption had been compromised by the very people they were meant to constrain." He paused, looking at the parade ground where everything had changed. What Captain Carter accomplished was not merely exposure of wrongdoing. It was demonstration that accountability remains possible even when systems fail, that integrity can survive even when surrounded by compromise. That one person, operating with patience and purpose, can create change that transforms an entire institution. "Sir," Carter said, "I had help. Lieutenant Brooks, Sergeant Foster, Chief Clark, Corporal Hayes, every soldier who came forward after the reveal. This was not one person against a system. This was the system finally working the way it was supposed to." Brennan smiled, the expression rare enough on his features that several nearby staff did double takes. "That, Captain, is exactly my point. The system works when individuals choose to make it work. You created the conditions that allowed others to add their contributions. That is leadership." The evening after the graduation ceremony, Carter returned to her quarters to complete her final reports. The mission was officially concluded. The reforms were in place. The perpetrators were facing consequences. The institution was healing. She should have felt satisfaction. Instead, she felt the particular emptiness that comes when a mission ends and the next one has not yet begun. Her secure tablet vibrated on the desk. An incoming message, encrypted at levels that required her personal authentication. She entered her credentials and watched the screen resolve into text. Classification, top secret, special compartmented information. Recipient, Carter Fern, Captain, USN. Subject, Operation Nightfall, Phase 2. Captain Carter, your successful completion of the Integration Assessment Mission has been noted at the highest levels. The reforms initiated at Joint Training Facility Bravo will serve as a template for institutional change across all branches. However, a situation has developed that requires your immediate attention. 3 operators from SEAL Team 4 have gone missing during a reconnaissance mission in Sector 7. Their last known position was within a compound previously identified as a logistics hub for hostile elements. Satellite imagery suggests they were compromised approximately 48 hours ago. Standard recovery protocols have been initiated, but the operational environment presents unique challenges that require specialized expertise. Specifically, the terrain and threat profile match conditions you encountered during Operation Resolute Thunder in 2018. Your temporary return to active combat status has been approved by the Secretary of Defense. Mission launch window opens in 72 hours. Full operational briefing will be provided upon your arrival at Forward Operating Base Sentinel. This communication will be deleted automatically in 60 seconds. End message. Carter read the words twice, then watched them dissolve from her screen as the automatic deletion protocol activated. She stood and walked to her window, looking out across the training field where evening PT was just concluding. Clover was there, leading a squad through their final exercises with confidence that would have been unthinkable 3 months ago. Henry was spotting a younger trainee on the obstacle course, his patience evident even from this distance. The reforms would continue without her. The protocols were in place. The culture had shifted. The mission here was complete. But somewhere in a hostile compound, 3 operators were waiting for rescue. 3 soldiers who had families, futures, lives that hung in the balance, while diplomatic channels and standard protocols ground through their inevitable delays. Carter crossed to her locker and opened the bottom compartment. Behind her dress uniforms, behind her regulation gear, her tactical equipment waited in perfect readiness. Plate carrier, olive drab and scarred from previous operations. Night vision devices, the latest generation, capable of turning darkness into advantage. Her MK-18 suppressed rifle, cleaned and maintained with the obsessive precision that separated professionals from amateurs. She touched the tattoo on her shoulder, the one that had changed everything on that parade ground. The trident, the skull, the coordinates of a city where she had learned what she was capable of becoming. Some people served their country through policy and reform. Some people served through training and instruction. And some people served by going to the places no one else could go, doing the things no one else could do, and returning the missing to those who loved them. Her phone buzzed with a text from a number she recognized. Aiden Foster. "Heard a rumor you might be leaving. True?" She typed her response. "Temporary assignment, back in 2 weeks. Keep the reforms running." "Will do. Stay safe out there, Captain." "Always." She began packing with the methodical efficiency of someone who had done this hundreds of times before. Each piece of equipment had its place. Each preparation followed procedures ingrained so deeply they required no conscious thought. At 0600 the next morning, she reported to Admiral Brennan's office for her final briefing before departure. "The situation in Sector 7 is complicated," Brennan began, pulling up satellite imagery on his wall display. "The compound where our operators were last tracked has been reinforced since our last assessment. Civilian population in the surrounding area makes airstrikes inadvisable. Ground approach requires navigating terrain that favors defenders." "I know that terrain," Carter said quietly. "I operated there in 2016 during the initial push. That is why you were requested." Brennan zoomed the display to show a specific structure within the compound. "Intelligence suggests our people are being held here. Second floor, northeast corner. The building has been modified since your last operation, but the foundational structure remains the same. Entry points? Limited. The primary approach is through the market district you mentioned during the tactics assessment. The same market district you recommended for exfiltration." Carter studied the imagery with eyes that saw not just buildings and barriers, but angles and approaches, threats and opportunities. "Team composition? You will link up with a 4-person element from SEAL Team 2 at FOB Sentinel. They have been briefed on your participation, but not on your recent assignment. As far as they know, you are being pulled from administrative duties. Cover story? Minimal. Your operational history speaks for itself. The team leader is Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb. He served under you during Operation Thunder Shield in 2017. Carter nodded. Webb was solid, professional. He would not ask questions that did not need answers. Rules of engagement? Recover our people. Minimize collateral damage. No international incidents. Brennan paused. But if you have to choose between our operators and diplomatic convenience, choose our operators. Understood, sir? Brennan closed the display and turned to face her directly. "Captain, before you go, I want to say something that is not in any official report." Carter waited. "What you did here mattered. Not just the evidence you collected or the prosecutions you enabled. The way you did it, the patience, the discipline, the refusal to compromise your values even when everyone around you expected you to break." He extended his hand. "You reminded me why I joined the military. Thank you." Carter shook his hand with the firmness of equals rather than the formality of ranks. "Thank you for trusting the process, sir. Some commanders would have intervened early. You let the evidence build until it was undeniable. I learned a long time ago that the best leaders know when to act and when to wait. You taught me that lesson better than any training course ever could." She departed the facility at 0700, her gear loaded into a vehicle that would take her to the airfield where a transport waited. As the vehicle passed through the main gate, she allowed herself one final look at the parade ground where everything had changed. Soldiers were forming for morning PT. Instructors were taking their positions. The flag was being raised in the dawn light. Life continuing, transformed but enduring, carrying forward the changes that had been so hard won. Clover Hayes spotted the departing vehicle and raised her hand in a wave that was half salute, half farewell. Carter returned it through the window, a small gesture that carried the weight of everything they had shared. Then the facility disappeared behind her, and her mind turned to the mission ahead. 3 operators missing, 72 hours to launch, hostile terrain, unknown enemy strength, the kind of mission where planning mattered less than adaptation, where training made the difference between coming home and not coming home. Some missions you never really leave behind. The words echoed in her mind as the transport lifted off, carrying her toward a conflict that the public would never know about, a rescue that would never make headlines, a continuation of service that had no endpoint except the one she would eventually choose. In her pocket, her phone held the last message she had sent before surrendering it for operational security. A message to Clover Hayes, brief and direct. "I'm distinct to seed. The reforms will continue, the training will improve, the culture will hold. That is your mission now. Make me proud." The reply had come immediately. "Yes, ma'am. Stay safe. Come back. Come back." 2 words that carried the weight of every soldier who had ever deployed, every family who had ever waited, every mission that had ever demanded more than duty and returned less than whole. Carter closed her eyes and let the transport's vibrations settle into her bones. In 12 hours, she would be on the ground. In 24, she would be approaching the target compound. In 48, if everything went according to plan, 3 missing operators would be heading home. And in 72 hours, she would know whether this mission would end like the hundreds before it, with success that no one would ever acknowledge, or whether it would end differently. Some questions did not have answers until the moment demanded them. Some missions you never really leave behind. And some soldiers keep serving, not because they must, but because they cannot imagine any other way to live. The transport banked toward the horizon, carrying Captain Fern Carter toward whatever came next. Questions remained unanswered in her wake, questions that would haunt those who had witnessed her mission. Who else had known about her true identity from the beginning? Admiral Brennan had recognized her tattoo at that first formation, had watched her persecution unfold without intervention. Was his patience strategic, or had there been moments when he doubted the plan? Had he ever considered revealing her identity early to spare her the abuse? What had happened to the other 6 female operators in the classified pilot program? Carter had mentioned them only in passing, their existence acknowledged, but their fates unexplained. Were they still active? Had they conducted similar missions at other facilities? Were there other reformers hiding in plain sight across the military, documenting injustice with the same patience Carter had demonstrated? The coordinates tattooed on her shoulder, 33 degrees north latitude, 44 degrees east longitude, pointed to Baghdad, but the missions those coordinates represented remained classified at levels even Admiral Brennan could not access. What had Captain Fern Carter done in that city? What had she witnessed? What had she become in the crucible of operations that would never appear in any history book? In Operation Nightfall, the mission now pulling her back into combat, what was Phase 1? The message had referenced Phase 2 as if the first phase were common knowledge, but no one at the facility had ever heard the operation's name. Was this a continuation of something Carter had started years before? Was there a larger strategy at play, a campaign that extended far beyond the rescue of 3 missing operators? Jasper Chambers, even in custody, had spoken of powerful friends who would protect him. Those friends had failed to materialize, their influence apparently insufficient against evidence documented by a DevGru operator. But who were they? How deep did the network of protection extend? Were there others, at other facilities, who operated under similar assumptions of immunity? The system had been reformed at Joint Training Facility Bravo, but across the military, how many other systems remained compromised? How many other Jasper Chambers continued their abuse unchallenged? How many other victims waited for someone to care enough to document their suffering? These questions would persist long after Carter's departure, rippling through conversations and policy discussions, driving investigations and reforms that would take years to complete. Some answers would emerge through official channels, some would remain classified forever, and some would only become clear when the next crisis demanded the next response from the next operator willing to sacrifice comfort for justice. Behind her, at Joint Training Facility Bravo, the morning formation concluded with a new tradition that would continue for years after her departure. Formation, a 10 hut. 170 soldiers snapped to attention. Today we train with integrity. Today we serve with honor. Today we remember that real strength is not measured by who we can dominate, but by who we choose to protect. The words echoed across the parade ground, carrying forward a legacy that had been written in patience, documented in courage, and sealed with a revelation that no one who witnessed it would ever forget. Clover Hayes stood at the front of the formation now, her position earned through excellence that had flourished once the barriers to her success had been removed. She thought of Carter every morning when she led her squad through PT. She thought of Carter every time she corrected a technique or encouraged a struggling trainee. She thought of Carter every time she chose patience over anger, instruction over intimidation, leadership over domination. The woman who had changed everything had not asked for recognition, had not sought glory, had not demanded that anyone remember her name or her sacrifice. But they remembered anyway. They remembered in the way they treated each other. They remembered in the policies they enforced. They remembered in the culture they protected and the standards they maintained. Some legacies are written in medals and citations. Some legacies are written in the quiet transformation of institutions. And some legacies are carried forward by the people who witnessed something extraordinary and chose to become worthy of what they had seen. And somewhere in the sky, heading toward danger, the woman who had made it all possible prepared to do what she had always done. The work that no one sees, the sacrifice that no one acknowledges, the service that never ends. Some missions you never really leave behind.